Hello and welcome to Ask the Consistory. I'm your host for this video, Reverend Zabel of St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church, located in Dalby, Queensland, Australia. Ask the Consistory is a video podcast produced by the Confessional Orthodox Evangelical Lutheran Communion, where we generally answer viewer questions. However, in this video, I'd like to be starting a series on angels and angelology and kind of by extension, demonology as well. So, the other year, I wrote a little book called Choirs of Angels, a brief study of the kind of angels. This is just a book, it's a real brief study into the different choirs of angels. It's just kind of a introduction to angelology and looking at the different ranks and choirs of angels mentioned in Scripture. I also have a Choir of Angels kids book, which is again just a way of trying to introduce young children into the concept of angels, the different type of angels, just giving the kids something interesting to look at rather than having them look into all like, all the superheroes or, fairy tales and stuff like that. They can have some biblical creatures to look at by studying the different types of angels. So both books are available on Lulu. If anybody would like to purchase them, just either search my name or search the name of the book, Choirs of Angels, a brief study on the kinds of angels. So in this video, I'd like to kick off my series on angelology. This is going to be a kind of ongoing series where I'm going to give you a brief introduction into the different choirs of angels mentioned in Scripture. So this will not be large, detailed studies. They're going to be very short videos, just giving a little bit of basic information that we know mainly from the Scriptures and a little bit of stuff that we know from church tradition, or stuff that is believed based on church tradition. So due to my busy schedule, I can't promise that these videos are going to be coming out every week or even every month or how regular they're going to be. Basically, you'll just get a video on angelology when I get around to recording and editing and posting the video on angelology. So you'll get the next one in this series whenever. I just thought it was appropriate to do the first video on St. Michael and All Angels Day. So that is today, and so that's why I'm posting this video today. So how I plan to do this series, I'm going to give you this first episode, giving you a brief introduction into what the study is going to be about. Then in the second study, I'm going to talk about what exactly the choirs of angels are. Are they kinds or ranks or species or careers, or how do we understand the choirs of angels? Then I'll be going through the traditional choirs of angels, and I'm going to be starting off with archangels, angels, seraphim, cherubim, omphanim, principalities, powers, dominions, virtues, and thrones. Then I'm going to touch on a few of the kind of more controversial choirs of angels, the eons, the hosts, and the watchers. These are some church fathers considered these to be choirs of angels, most didn't, so we're going to discuss them towards the end. And what are they? Are they choirs of angels? Should they be included in the choirs of angels or not? We'll get to those when we get to them. After that, then we're going to look into a bit of demonology, looking at the demons and the different choirs of demons, and then we'll wrap up with a final conclusion episode. Now in these studies, I'm going to be basically giving you my interpretation on these different choirs of angels based on the Scriptures and a bit of church tradition. As Lutherans, we don't actually hold to a definitive doctrine around the choirs of angels. The Roman Catholics have a definitive concept of 9 choirs of angels, that there are 3 tiers, in which in 3 tiers there are 3 choirs each. And the Roman Catholics, and I believe the Eastern Orthodox too, have this very complicated angelology. Whereas Luther said, we don't actually hold to such a complex angelology. The Scriptures are very silent on this matter. A lot of what the Church has taught through the history has been based on a lot of speculation. So I'm really going to be trying to cut out as much of the speculation as I can and really just focus on what Scripture says and giving my own interpretation and understanding of what Scripture says. So I just want to start by saying that these videos these videos are more of a study into the concept of angelology, and it'll be used as kind of A bit of a foretaste just to get people interested in angelology and looking at the category of angels. They shouldn't take my opinions and my views here as the definitive Lutheran position or the definitive coelc position. Pastor Magnus in the coelc or any other pastor that joins the coelc may have different interpretations on the choirs of angel. I'm going to try and keep things very general, and when I do talk about things that are my opinion on the matter, I will try and specify that that is my opinion. That is not the official position of Lutheranism or the coelc, since Lutheranism doesn't really have an official opinion on how many choirs there are and what the choirs of angels are, because the scriptures don't really give a lot of detail. A lot of these choirs are mentioned in passing and not a lot of information is given. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's just get on with the introduction for this first video. And so I'm just going to be basically reading from my book. I'll chuck in extra comments here and there where I feel appropriate, but mostly I'll just be reading directly from my book, Choirs of Angels. So in the book and in this study, we're going to be having a look at the choirs of angels. Now, traditionally, the church has divided the angels into 9 choirs. This tradition of dividing the angels into 9 choirs is found as early as St. Ambrose of Milan in the 300s AD, and it followed the work known as On the Celestial Hierarchy, which was written in the late 400s AD, but claimed to have been written by Dionysius the Areopagite, a convert of St. Paul's in Acts 1734. So this document is sometimes referred to as Pseudo-Dionysius because nobody these days believes it was actually written by this Dionysius that knew St. Paul. Most people believe it was written hundreds of years later by somebody who just claimed to be Dionysius. Now, the division of 9 choirs of angels would be accepted by Pope Gregory the Great in the 500s. And it was made famous by St. John Damascus in the 700s, and it was later kind of expanded upon in greater detail by the scholastic scholar St. Thomas Aquinas in the 1200s. Now, the work known as On the Celestial Hierarchy would also divide these 9 choirs of angels into 3 triads, something that would be picked up again by Aquinas in his something that would also be picked up by Aquinas in his Summa Theologica. Now, the first triad is known as the heavenly servants, those who serve around the throne of God. This is the seraphim, the cherubim, and the omphanim, or the wheels, is what the word omphanim translates into. The second triad are known as the heavenly governors, those that rule over the creation, including physical matter and other spirits. These are the dominions, the powers, sometimes called authorities, and the virtues, sometimes called powers. So this is why angelology can sometimes be confusing, because the powers choir can sometimes be known as the authorities choir, and the virtues choir can sometimes be known as the powers choir. So when you're talking about the choir of powers, it is important to determine which one you're talking about. Are you talking about the authorities or the virtues? The third triad are the heavenly guardians. These are those who guard and protect and serve the humans. These are the principalities, the archangels, and the angels or messengers. This, however, is not the only listing of choirs of angels ever put forth by different church fathers. For different church fathers proposed different choirs of angels. The most famous 2 would be, firstly, the one of St. Jerome, also from the 300s AD, who had only 7 choirs of angels: the cherubim, the seraphim, the powers, dominions, the omphanim or thrones, the archangels, and the angels. There is also one from the Apostolic Constitution, a work also from the 300s, which has 11 choirs. There are the seraphim, the cherubim, the eons or ages, the hosts, the powers or virtues, the authorities, the principalities, the dominions, the thrones or omphanim, the archangels, and the angels. So in this book, we're going to have a brief discussion on all these different choirs, including I'm going to discuss the eons, the hosts, and also even the watchers, which don't often get mentioned by any of the church fathers, but I think should be mentioned since they do appear in the book of Daniel. We're also going to discuss the concept of angelic species versus angelic careers, which is something that I want to touch in the next study in this video series. But before we begin, I just want to inform the reader that Martin Luther and all the reformers rejected the traditional 9 choirs of angels as the imaginations of men. Johannes Queensland said regarding the 9 choirs of angels that there are definitively 9 orders or choirs of angels, and that these are divided into 3 classes or turnions, which they call hierarchies. This we reject as uncertain and false. So we cannot for certain know how many types of angels there are, or what each choir actually does, for Scripture does not reveal this to us. In this book that I wrote, and in this study that I will be based on this book, we will be merely discussing the traditional views of the choirs of angels and how they stack up against Scripture. Even though we cannot know for sure the exact information about the types of angels, this is a bit of fun to speculate about and to ponder over the fragments of information that Scripture does provide us. So in these upcoming studies, I'm going to be telling you what the tradition says, what the Scriptures say, and what I personally think on the matter. So I hope you enjoy this upcoming series on angelology. I'll see you again sometime in the future. I've been your host, Jake Zabel. Goodbye and God bless.